Welcome back to A Time for Change. LGBTQ teens and young adults have always been at a greater risk for suicide than their heterosexual peers. I want to take a look at some numbers that we showed you at the top of the show. In the past year, 42% of LGBTQ plus young people seriously considered suicide, and half of transgender youth did.
And that study is from an organization called the Trevor Project, which has offered support and resources to LGBTQ teens and young adults for more than 20 years. I spoke with Amit Paley, CEO of the Trevor Project, about what some companies are doing to support the community and the impact of the economic shutdown and stay-at-home orders on LGBTQ youth.
The pandemic has had a very dramatic impact on LGBTQ young people. It has impacted them in so many ways. There are young people who are more at the K-12 level who normally would have sources of support in their schools in person from teachers or guidance counselors or GSAs who now are cut off from that and have been trapped in homes with parents or families that are unsupportive, in some cases emotionally abusive or even physically abusive. And same at the university level and college level, a lot of students cut out for the first time in college. And then when the pandemic happened and they had to go home, they had to quickly make a decision if they were going to come back and come out to their parents or go back into the closet. In both cases, very challenging decisions. So we hear those types of stories every day at the Trevor Project, and our call volume has at times been more than double our typical volume. So it's a huge impact on the mental health of LGBTQ youth.
And what has been the most harmful aspect of the pandemic aside from the virus itself? Is it the economic shutdown with all non-essential businesses closed, or the stay-at-home orders?
I think it's all of it. And for different LGBTQ youth, there are different things that matter most to them and that have impacted them most. For this, the stay-at-home orders have been very difficult because, as I just mentioned, there have been so many young people who, if they don't have supportive families or parents, they would find that support in other physical settings. And so being trapped in homes with parents or families that are unsupportive could really have a huge impact. We saw in our national survey on LGBTQ youth mental health that 80% said COVID-19 made their living situation more stressful, and only 1 in 3 found their home to be LGBTQ affirming. And I think it's also important to note that this is not new. They're not new things that happen just because of the pandemic. LGBTQ youth are at greater risk of suicide and discrimination even before this pandemic. This pandemic really exacerbated a lot of the pre-existing forms of discrimination and isolation that existed.
And Amit, you alluded to it, recent research that your organization released that shows that affirming spaces and support systems help save LGBTQ lives. Many have turned to online communities for support, yet an overwhelming majority say that when it comes to social media, they're both positive and negative impacts. So what is your advice to LGBTQ youth when it comes to social media and online communities?
Well, it really is going to depend on the type of situation that LGBTQ young people are in. As you mentioned, social media is both very helpful and it can be very harmful. For LGBTQ young people who might be in parts of the country or in living situations where they just do not have the ability to connect with people who are like them, social media can be life-saving. It allows them to have a sense of community. It allows them to connect with people who are like them. It allows them to feel less alone. And we also know that social media can be filled with trolls, can be filled with people who are hateful, and those messages of hate can be very difficult. And so I think it's important for LGBTQ young people to try to find spaces that are safe and healthy for them, and to be aware that there is going to be hate that exists in the world, and that can be challenging to face, and to also be aware that there are many, many people in the world who not only are not hateful, but are going to celebrate and support LGBTQ for being who they are.
Well, Google is listed as being one of your top corporate partners. They've contributed more than $1 million to the Trevor Project. How have you used those funds? And has Google also been a partner when it comes to addressing the negative impact of social media on LGBTQ youth?
Google has been an incredible partner to the Trevor Project in helping us to leverage technology to serve more LGBTQ young people. it's not easy to be able to provide high quality service to young people who are counting on it. And so a lot of the work we've been doing with Google has been, how can we leverage best practices in technology in the need that LGBTQ youth have, and to help them get the best quality care that they have. And Google has been working to ensure that they are providing resources to their own employees and more support and messages of support to LGBTQ youth. Obviously, all parts of this country have a long journey to go on. And I think what's important is to make sure that we are encouraging companies to do more to support and be there for LGBTQ youth who are in need.
Other corporate sponsors for the Trevor Project include AT&T, FedEx, Coca-Cola, Bank of America. What do you think these companies get out of partnering with the Trevor Project? And are they simply motivated by goodwill, or is this having an impact on their bottom line?
Well, I think it depends on the type of company that there is. I think some companies are really looking for the opportunity to make a difference. And I think we are seeing more and more companies that are realizing that they have an obligation to shareholders, and they also have an obligation to society, and they need to be investing in important stakeholders in society and making the world a better place. So I think we're gratified to see more companies doing that. And the more that companies can show that they care about LGBTQ young people and about other social issues, that's going to be important for their employees. That's going to be important for customers. And I think we are seeing that more people are looking at companies and saying, is this company taking steps to make the world a better place? And that is part of the calculus that consumers are making in deciding where to put their dollars.
And I mean, what else would you like to see corporate America do to really support LGBTQ youth in America?
There are a number of things that we hope corporate America will do. I think right now, when we look at the political space in this country, we are seeing consistent attacks on LGBTQ young people, and in particular, transgender and non-binary young people. This is happening at the state level in state capitals across the country, and companies can and should be speaking out. They should be saying it is wrong to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity, and advocating for legislatures to take the right steps. And on the federal level, there are a number of things they can do. The Equality Act is a very important piece of legislation. They can make clear to senators in particular and members of Congress that it is consistent with their corporate values to have a country that is eliminating discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. They also can be investing in nonprofits like the Trevor Project. They can be putting out positive messaging, which is normalizing the importance of recognizing LGBTQ youth. And they can also be taking steps for their internal employees. Many employees are young people themselves. And so doing things like recognizing the importance of pronouns, having trans-inclusive healthcare policies, all gender restrooms, those are just some of the things they can do to make the world a better place for LGBTQ people and young people.
And that was Trevor Project CEO Amit Paley talking about what corporate America can do more of to support the LGBTQ community.
You know, Sibile, I think it's a striking number that we brought up earlier in the show, and I'm wondering if Amit had anything to say about that high number of transgenders who have seriously considered suicide. It's something like 50%.
Yes, that number is very high. And what Amit Paley was saying is that they have trained counselors at the Trevor Project who really deal with those calls and try to provide support to LGBTQ youth as they were dealing with all the impacts of the pandemic. So that's why we saw that spike in suicide calls. But Alexa, I'm curious to know, what was your reaction to Amit's interview?
Oh, I think that it's very powerful. You know, I think that, this show is an important one, what we're saying here today, to shine a light on transgender. It's part of Title VII, as we saw with the Supreme Court case last year. They won important rights in 2020. But as we're hearing today during the show and what Amit just laid out for us, there's still a lot of ground to be made up.
Absolutely.